Welcome, everybody, to another edition of All In with Art Stapleton, a New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I'm your host, Art Stapleton, and we have reached Week 18 in the NFL. Unfortunately for the Giants, it is the final week of the 2024 season. We just happen to be 2 days into 2025. Happy New Year to everyone, and it is a trip on deck to Philadelphia this weekend, where the Giants will close out the third season in the Brian Daboll, Joe Schoen era, coming off a win. Few and far between this season, their third win. Obviously, we know what that did to the NFL draft order for next year. They're no longer number one. They are currently slotted fourth. If they lose, they will be no lower than fourth come April. If they win, they will drop to the back end of the top 10, most likely. Can they get up to number one again? Well, it's probably unlikely, but if the Patriots win, if the Titans win, and if the Cleveland Browns win, and the Giants lose, then they will have the number one overall pick in the draft. That's what you got. You got the Browns on Saturday against Baltimore, an unlikely situation for a win for Cleveland. But then you have the Patriots playing a Bills team that is resting everybody. We'll see if the Patriots and Gerard Mayo feel like they need to win a game. And if they do win, then the Giants would jump them if they lose. And then the Tennessee Titans, who are favored against the Texans, who are not playing anybody, or at least not supposed to play anybody, since they have their playoff berth clinched already. And we'll see if the Titans can pull off a win. And if they do, the Giants will leapfrog them with a loss. But it all starts with Giants-Eagles in Philly. The news that we got yesterday from Nick Sirianni, Saquon Barkley will not be playing this weekend and going for the NFL rushing record currently held by Eric Dickerson. Saquon's over 2,000 yards, but he is not going to go for the record against the Giants. The Eagles, I think they're doing the smart thing. They have a bigger picture. They want to win a Super Bowl. And right now they're slotted as the number 2 seed in the NFC. That's where they will be. Vikings and Lions, the winner Sunday night gets the number 1. The loser gets number 5. But the Eagles are sitting there at number 2, and they will be in action the first weekend of the playoffs against either Washington, or there's a possibility that it's the Rams in that situation, or actually it's the NFC South winner. Could be Tampa, could be Atlanta, but the Eagles are home. So what does that set up for the Giants? I know there are a lot of Giants fans now are saying that the Eagles are going to tank the game, and it's going to be the Giants against the Eagles' backups. Well, first off, they can't bench everyone. So you would imagine that you're going to see Tanner McKee at quarterback for the Eagles. They'll probably have a backup offensive line in there. But the reality is that the Giants are mostly playing their backups too. So the Eagles are going to compete. I can't imagine that Nick Sirianni is going to start calling plays that are obvious in tanking mode for the Eagles this weekend. The Giants have not won at Lincoln Financial Field since 2013. That was when Tom Coughlin was the coach. Peyton Hillis was the leading rusher. Victor Cruz was the leading receiver. And Josh Brown kicked 5 field goals. I think they won the game 15-7. So what does it mean for the Giants? Well, it's similar to last week, although they're not looking at a 10-game losing streak or finishing 0-9 at home. We'll see how the Giants play. They played inspired ball last week, especially on the offensive side. Malik Neighbors, you get him the ball in space, you see what he can do. He still has an opportunity to set the Giants' all-time record for receptions in a season, not just rookie, but for all players. Steve Smith set that in 2009 with the Giants, 107. And considering Malik Neighbors is at 104, I think he's got a pretty good chance at setting the all-time reception mark for a single season for the Giants. He's at 1140 for yardage. He could climb. Obviously, there's still the Brock Bowers situation. Brock Bowers has passed Puka Nacua and his record that was set last year for rookies. Bowers, I believe, is at 108. So if by some chance Malik Neighbors can pass Brock Bowers, he would then own the rookie record for receptions in a season. Does any of that erase 3-13? No, it does not. And the way things are, we're still going to have questions Monday morning. Is Joe Schoen back? Yes, I believe he is. Is Brian Daboll back? Right now I'm leaning towards yes, that he will be back as head coach. I've been telling you that for a month and a half, what I believed, what I think should happen, and now what I think is reality. I do think that they are going to move forward with this regime for one more year to see if they can get them a quarterback in here and move forward. But as with anything, we will not know until anything is made official Monday or Tuesday. The game will be Sunday. They will travel back from Philly. Monday will be Baggy Day, Black Monday. We'll get the players. There's no sense yet if we're going to get Joe Schoen or Brian Daboll or John Mara. What could happen, I think if the Giants had made the decision to keep both Schoen and Daboll, I think John Mara will come out and make a statement Monday morning. If they are making a decision beyond that and they want the players to leave the building, which remember that's what they did last year when it came to the coaching decisions, everything that happened with Wink Martindale and what happened with the offensive line coach with Bobby Johnson, I think that may happen after the players leave on Monday. But there's still a lot to be determined this weekend, or I should say a lot that we don't know that may already be determined. But I'll be down in Philly on Sunday and try to give you a sense of what the locker room feels like, what I feel around the team. That's what we always do. So that's pretty much setting up this weekend. I have a couple questions from the guys at K12, so I will try to answer them. Eric had the question about Antonio Pierce. If he's not back in Las Vegas, we know AP is a Giant. Is he a candidate for defensive coordinator's job here if Shane Bowen is not here? And as Eric points out, it could be twofold for Shane Bowen. If Mike Vrabel, his head coach in Tennessee, gets a head coaching job elsewhere, does he want to bring Shane Bowen with him? Will the Giants allow him out of his contract to go with Vrabel? That is possible. I don't know what AP will do moving forward. I don't know if he wants to go back into a defensive coordinator's role. My guess is when they signed him last year off of the intern tag, they gave him a pretty good contract. So he would still be under contract for Las Vegas. Maybe AP comes here in a consulting role, similar to what Mike Vrabel did when he went to Cleveland this year for a year. He was let out of his contract last week in Cleveland so he could interview for head coaching jobs. So maybe AP does something like that. But, you know, it's an interesting name. If Brian Daboll is the head coach and has to look for a DC again, we will see how that plays out. Eric wants to know also any QBs currently on the roster here next year. That's to be determined. It really depends on what they do in the draft or what their plans are in the draft, where they're picking. You know, if they're number one, they know they're picking a quarterback, so they could make their free agency decisions in March based on that. Right now, if they're picking fourth, they don't know who they're going to take, so they have to kind of hedge their bets in free agency. That's what we saw with Drew Lock here and Daniel Jones. You know, a lot of people forget the timing of everything. We saw this year play out in Hard Knocks in July, but remember, that happened in the end of January, February, through the Combine, beginning of March. You know, free agency. Drew Lock was signed for $5 million during free agency when the Giants had not even gone into the draft yet. They didn't know if they were going to be able to get a quarterback. They didn't know where Daniel Jones's knee would be. So they have to make decisions to kind of hedge their bets in free agency. A name that's popped up And that goes to Tony's question. If the Giants don't like or are unable to get a Shedeur Sanders or a Cam Ward, do they look Wentz, Garoppolo, and try to find a Baker Mayfield type turnaround? Carson Wentz is a name I've heard the last couple of weeks that people are trying to push. It'd be interesting to see him play this weekend for the Chiefs in a game that the Broncos need to make the playoffs. So let's see where Carson Wentz is. Could he be a cheap bridge? Possible. I don't know if he's done enough behind the scenes in Kansas City to be that viable option. Did Drew Lock find something on Sunday, or was it just a one game? Could they want to bring Drew Lock back as a bridge with the rookie coming in? Could they look elsewhere and say they want a Jameis Winston or, Sam Darnold, I think, has outplayed his contract right now. And I don't think Minnesota lets him go. I think Minnesota finds a way to sign Sam Darnold. And that brings up the other question. Everybody keeps bringing up J.J. McCarthy. And will the Vikings look to trade J.J. McCarthy and sign Sam Darnold long term? The Vikings have no reason to get rid of J.J. McCarthy right now. And that's, to me, coming off of 2 knee surgeries, one back in August when he initially was hurt. Adam Schefter mentioned yesterday the ACL. I had heard it was a torn meniscus, but either Schefter misspoke or if it was actually damage to the ACL. He had swelling in the knee in November and then ended up having to have another procedure to clean it up. He's not costing them $40 million a year per se. So they can keep J.J. McCarthy. They can sign Sam Darnold, depending on how Sam and the Vikings perform in the playoffs, and still have coverage. So I don't see them looking right away to trade J.J. McCarthy unless a team really believed in J.J. McCarthy and was going to overpay for J.J. McCarthy. Now, what have you seen in a year? J.J. McCarthy hasn't played a snap during the regular season. He had one preseason game. You're telling me that a guy who played one preseason game off of college game film and 2 knee surgeries is now all of a sudden you're going to trade a first-round pick to get him in here or elsewhere? I find that hard to believe. So I think J.J. McCarthy stays in Minnesota and goes from there. So that's where we're at. I think, moving forward, look, if we get changes at GM, if we get a change at head coach, if we get changes at coordinators, we will be all in. We will give you candidates. We will give you preferences. We will give you everything that the Giants should be looking for to fill those positions if they decide to part ways with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. Right now, my gut says they are not going to part ways with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. I think, what John Mara said back at the end of October still stands. Yes, the Giants have won 1 game since then, but I truly believe that they're wanting to give this regime another season. I know that does not make people happy, but this is a business decision too. When you make widespread decisions, and I've talked about this, when you change a coach, and that means a new coaching staff, or you change a GM, and that means changes in scouting and your personnel departments, that's widespread in this building behind me. And that's a lot to take. And when you've been making as many changes as they've made here with the Giants since Tom Coughlin left, you don't want to have the stomach to make those changes. Now, look, if you believe it's done and you believe that you have no more confidence in Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, then you make those changes and you bite the bullet. But just don't think that all of a sudden it's going to be a quick fix. If anything, it's going to take longer than it would have taken when Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll took over. And that's the only reason why people like me bring up what happened with Dave Gettleman. For 4 years, this organization deteriorated in trust and performance. So when you had to replace Dave Gettleman, the organization was in a worse situation than when you replace Jerry Reese. That's the reality. And it was in a bad situation with Jerry Reese. So that's the point that I'm trying to make here. It's not putting what's going on now on Dave Gettleman. It's what's talking about now and putting it in perspective as to what they had to deal with when they took over. They took over a team that Dave Gettleman knocked down to the studs, and it continued to need to be built up. And that first year, by winning 9 games and a playoff game, I think if they go back, they would do things differently, but they didn't do it. And now they're where they're at. And I think John Mara and Steve Tisch will give them an opportunity to now take this as a full rebuild, to draft a quarterback, forget about the Daniel Jones contract. It's already water under the bridge. Remember, there are teams that get second chances at quarterback and third chances at quarterback, and they lose as much as the Giants have lost. So we'll be in Philly this weekend. I'm not sure what to expect after last week against the Colts. Who knows what Giants team is going to show up. I think Malik Neighbors makes it fun. You never know what you're going to see from him. The Giants have not won at Philly since 2013. Obviously, there's an asterisk on this game with the Eagles expected to sit out a lot of starters. But we'll see how it pans out. We'll be all over the draft order, be all over the schedule for next year. And then obviously when the dust settles Monday or Tuesday, we'll look forward for the Giants and what the future holds at GM, at head coach, at the coaching staff, and at quarterback, especially for this team. So appreciate you listening as always. Again, Happy New Year to everyone, to the All In family, from the All In family, and to you and yours. I appreciate you. Thank you for being a part of the show. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll catch you this weekend in Philly, because it's going to be an interesting one for the Giants to close out this season. There's a lot to get to this offseason. There's one more game left. And remember, the next time the Giants take the field is in September. So you're going to be begging for some Giants football. As bad as it's been, let's try to appreciate a little bit of it this weekend down in Philly. For Paul Wood, I'm Art Stapleton. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we'll catch you this weekend post-game after the finale in Philadelphia.